How are you? I hope that you're faring well. I'm Dr. Ahmed Abdul Wahab, and today, inshallah, we are going to solve the first section from the writing portion or literacy test 1 from the EST October 2020 examination. Let's go. So, the passage is called How Pandemics Change Society. Sometimes it's important to know the title of the passage so that you can understand everything that comes later on well. So, let's actually begin reading the passage together. The Black Death, the Spanish flu, and other disease outbreaks have transformed how people live. Will COVID-19 change the world? It will do so, if it is similar to the pandemics of the past. Plagues and viral contagions have regularly improved the course of human civilization. Okay, so to know what type of question this is, very simply read the answers from top to bottom and notice what changed. So as we can see, we have the word improved, the word occurred, helped, and witnessed. So very simply, this is a word choice question. Now, which word suits the most here or is most suitable? To know that, let's actually read another sentence just in case so that we have enough evidence to support our answer. So, things are never the same after a pandemic as they were before. So what we want to say, in other words, is that things change when it comes to a pandemic. So we want a word that has a similar meaning, something that indicates that things changed when it comes to a pandemic. So the first answer that we have, which is to leave it as it is, improved, which means that things changed for the better. Okay. Then we have answers like occurred and witnessed, which are not related at all to change. So therefore, both of them are incorrect. And then we have the example, the word helped. Now, which of these is most suitable in this context? We're talking about that a pandemic caused a change, and that change resulted in a completely different outlook later on. Of course, what is more suitable here is to very simply say improved, since it means to change for the better, right? Let's continue reading. Said Dr. Liam Fox, who '(s) studied. Now, this was one of the questions that I'm simply going to mark with a star because it's really important, and a lot of students got a mistake in this question. A lot of students assume that if we say who '(s), then that means who is. However, in some cases, we might say who '(s) to indicate that we want to say who has, as some sort of contraction. So, if I say who '(s) studied, of course I don't mean who is studied, but rather I mean who has studied. So we have four answers here. I can either say who has studied, who is studying, who's studied, and who has studied or who is studied. Of course, D is completely wrong. There is nothing in the English language in which we can say who is or who has and then the verb as it is, like to say study, or for example, who has eat. Like this is not found in the English language, and therefore it's automatically incorrect. So who's studied also has to be eliminated, because when we say who's written in this way, then we are trying to indicate ownership, or in other words, we are trying to indicate that this belongs to me. Like for example, when we say whose book is this, what we're trying to say is who owns this book. So of course I cannot own a verb, right? And therefore C is completely wrong. So we are left with two answers that are possible. It's either that I'm trying to say who is studying or who has studied. Now, answer B is wrong. Let's erase this for a moment. Answer B is completely wrong. When I say is plus the present participle, or very simply the verb with an ing, the meaning I'm trying to convey is that the action is happening right now, in this second, right? Now, Dr. Liam Fox, the person who told me this, of course, was not studying in the same moment when he was telling me this. So we cannot say, for example, that he was holding a book and studying in the same second that he told me about this action, right? We can't say that this happened. And therefore, an answer like B is completely wrong. So the only answer that we will have possible is A, no change, to leave it as it is, right? So the answer in this case will be A. Okay, as for question 3, it won't take as much time as 2. It's actually a very easy question. So let's continue reading. The earliest pandemic, we're very clearly talking about the first pandemic, right? The first one that happened. So of course it has to take a verb in the past. So very simply we will say occurred, because we're talking about the earliest pandemic or the first pandemic, and therefore we want a verb in the past, right? So for question 3, the answer very simply will be as it is. To be like occurred, okay? Okay. So we have question 4. It's another difficult question. However, we will try to explain it very quickly. So let's read it together. Let's try to change the font as for some, or like the color for some sort of change, right? Okay, the cause of plague is Yersinia pestis. So notice that I just told you the name, Yersinia pestis. And then I proceeded to tell you the definition of what Yersinia pestis is. It's a bacterium spread by fleas on rodents. Now, if you might recall, we've said in a previous video that when we have a name followed by the definition, we usually put this definition between 2 commas or 2 brackets or 2 dashes. So like we treat it as if it's non-essential information. We treat the definition as if it's non-essential. So if we look at the answers, we have 2 answers that abide by these rules. So first we have answer C, which chose to put the definition between 2 brackets. And then we have answer D, which very simply puts the answer between 2 commas. Okay? So both of these answers are possible. However, which of them makes more sense here? And here we come to the tricky part of this question. If we look at this question, we will find that the cause of plague is Yersinia pestis, a bacterium spread by fleas and rodents, is an independent clause. That means that it has a subject, which is the cause of plague, and then it has a verb and a full meaning. This is what we call an independent clause, right? And if we take a look at the second part, I'm going to mark it in a different color, let's say in dark yellow. It is the same culprit behind one of the worst pandemics in human history, the death or the Black Death. This part is also independent, right? However, we will find that the word and between them is written alone. It doesn't have something that comes before it. And as we've taken previously, if you have 2 independent clauses, they must be joined by one of 3 solutions. We can either use a full stop, we can use a semicolon, or we can use comma plus one of the fanboys. And of course, and is one of the fanboys. So keep this as a rule in your mind. Whenever you find 2 independent clauses, try to use the word and is between them, it must always be preceded by a comma. The only way or the only solution in which and will be preceded by a comma is if we choose D, which actually puts a comma before and. So therefore, the answer in this question will be D. Okay, now let's go to question 5, and it's actually a really tricky question. Now, regarding question 5, to make this paragraph most logical, sentence 2 should be placed where? Okay, so let's read sentence 2. Routine medical inspections became customary, and hospitals were built throughout Europe to treat the sick. Now, in order questions, there's a very simple technique that we use that will help you get any of these questions, the correct answer, inshallah, in any of these questions, which is very simply in any order question, find the sentence with a similar idea. So we will try to find a sentence that has a very similar idea. So in this sentence, we are talking about routine medical inspections. And for your own knowledge, the word inspections means examination. So we are talking about medical inspections or medical examinations that will be done in a hospital. So let's continue reading and search for a sentence that has a similar idea. So routine medical inspections became customary, and hospitals were built throughout Europe to treat the sick. The Black Death eventually swept throughout Europe and wiped out about 200 million people. As a result, it forced authorities to institute health measures. Do you remember something that we said about health measures? Yes, we talked about the medical inspections. So here we're talking about instituting health measures. As we can see, health measures and routine medical inspections have the same idea or a similar idea. So now we are pretty sure that sentence 2, the sentence that we were asked about, is related to sentence 4. Now the question, should sentence 2 be before or after sentence 4? In a question like this, you have to try to put them next to each other and see which makes more sense. So let's try to put sentence 2 before sentence 4 first. And if it doesn't fit, let's try to reverse that. Let's put sentence 4 before sentence 2. Sentence 2 says, routine medical inspections became customary and hospitals were built throughout Europe to treat the sick. Now, after reading sentence 2, let's try to read sentence 4. As a result, it forced authorities to institute health measures that remain in place today. Does this make sense? Can I say that the health measures were the result of routine medical inspections? Of course not. Remember that we have the word as a result here. So can I say that that the routine medical inspections are what forced authorities to have health measures? Does this make sense? Or does it make more sense to say that the routine medical inspections are an example of one of the health measures that the authorities did? Of course, it makes sense to say that what came in sentence 2, this part, is very simply an example of one of the health measures we are talking about in sentence 4, right? So what we have in sentence 2 is just an example on one of the health measures that we talked about in sentence 4. And therefore, it makes sense to put sentence 4 first. Put the sentence that presents the idea first, and then put the example that you're trying to do, right? So that's for question 5. Now, I know that question 5 took a lot of time, but a lot of the questions that will come after it will not take as much time, so do not worry regarding the time. The Black Deaths, let's continue reading after this paragraph. Let's change the font. Okay. The Black Death's biggest socioeconomic legacy was its role in ending feudalism. What was feudalism? Feudalism was a medieval system that empowered wealthy nobles. So it made the wealthy nobles, the wealthy people, even wealthier. How did it do that? It helped the nobles grant the use of their land to peasants, to poor people. Okay? In exchange for their labor. We're trying to say the labor of the peasants. So in this case, we have to use their, this one, answer C. This is the one that indicates ownership. I'm sorry, there appears to be a problem. Okay, we're back. So this is the one that indicates ownership, right? The labor of the peasants. The peasants own this labor. So therefore, we have to choose answer C, their, okay? In exchange for their labor. By wiping out a huge swath of the working population, so as a result of the plague, as a result of the disease, a lot of the peasants, so let's say that we had a lot of peasants, right? We had a lot of people to work in that land. A lot of them were wiped out. A lot of them died. And as a result, the Black Death created a labor shortage. Labor means work, if you do not know what the word labor means. Okay? So as a result, there was a labor shortage. In other words, that means that there was a shortage of peasants to work on the land. Okay? There was a labor shortage. The Black Death created a labor shortage that gave peasants then we have a certain word. This is a word choice question. We either have the word leverage, which means the upper hand. Like they had the upper hand in negotiations. They had a much better ability to negotiate. Or alternative, strength, or investment. So the Black Death created a labor shortage that gave peasants then this word, to negotiate new working terms. effectively bringing about the end of serfdom and paving the way for modern capitalism. So what we are saying is that since there was a fewer number of peasants, then they had an advantage when it came to negotiation. What does the word negotiation means? Negotiation means to agree on new terms. اللي هي يا شباب الفصال، ان انا افاصل حد واجادل معاه عشان اوصل الرأي اللي انا شايفه صح. تمام؟ So when it came to negotiations, did they have an advantage or not? Let's think about it. So the number of peasants is less, and as a result, there is a higher demand or there's a higher need for them. Of course, this gave them the advantage and the upper hand when it came to negotiations. And as a result, we can use the word leverage. Let's actually try a different font. So we can use the word leverage, which means the upper hand when it came to negotiations, right? That's for question 7. The coronavirus has already had a huge and potentially enduring impact. This question is really easy. So, which wording best conveys that the coronavirus is long-lasting? We want a word that means long-lasting. So let's look at the words that we have. Enduring, which literally means lasting for a long time. Or fleeting, which actually has the opposite meaning. So like short time, lasting for a short time. Sudden, which we all know what the word sudden means. It means, suddenly means at a second, or like in a second, in a jiffy. And appalling, which means horrible. Of those words, of course, the correct answer is A, right? Lasting for a long time. The word enduring. It actually has two meanings. So I want you to know the meanings just in case you either encounter any of them again. The first is lasting for a long time. And the second one is capable of handling a lot of stress. So like if something endures, that means that it lasts for a long duration and can handle a lot of stress. That's regarding question 8. Now let's continue reading. Let's change the font again. Okay. Our work and social lives have gone virtual. Okay, have gone virtual, that means they're no longer materialistic. They depend on the internet. Now question 9 says, which choice is most consistent with the logical flow of the sentence? So that means has the same idea. And sometimes when we use this pattern, we very simply mean parallelism. So like both of them can be used, okay? Our work and social lives have gone virtual. Movie studios, gyms, musicians, and karaoke bars are streaming their content straight into our homes. Does this sentence have the same idea? Of course it does. So here we're talking about going virtual, no longer being available in the real world, right? And when we look here, we're talking about how everything that we do, from movie studios to gyms to musicians to karaoke bars, are streaming their content right into our homes, right into a virtual manner. So both of these have the same idea, right? And therefore, the correct answer is no change, to keep it as it is. I know that we've spent a lot of time, but do not worry, we have only 2 more questions. So focus with me in those 2, okay? Let's go. So the first question is question 10. The outbreak. Let's change the font. I like to change the font a lot because it seems to me that when you change the font, you students like focus more because the screen is really colorful and stuff. So let's go. The outbreak has also revived impassioned debates about the US healthcare system, possibly offering a hindrance to those in favor of universal coverage. Now, you might not know what universal coverage means because it's not a term that we say a lot in our Arab nations, but universal coverage means health care for all people. So this is another word choice question, and we have 4 questions to choose on. It's either that the outbreak has helped debates about the US healthcare system and those asking for universal coverage. Let's think about it. Is something like an outbreak in their favor or not? Well, let's think about it. When you have a health outbreak and a lot of people are dying you would wish for a better healthcare, right? It's like what's happening right now in Corona. So in countries like Egypt or in Saudi Arabia, or even in the United States, where a lot of people are dying, you would say, man, I wish if we had a better healthcare system, if we had better hospitals and nurses and doctors so that they could take care of our people, right? So it's in favor, an outbreak or a pandemic is in favor of those people. So we want a word that indicates that it's in favor of them, it's an advantage. So a word like hindrance means to go back, to be hindered, like to go back or to be stopped, right? So of course it's wrong. A word like an obstacle is very similar in meaning, like to hinder. An obstacle means something that blocks your path, something that blocks your path. A boon means an advantage, something that's of benefit or helpful. And D means a disadvantage. Of course, out of these answers, what makes sense the most is a boon, which means an advantage or something that works in your favor or helps you, right? Now we have one more question remaining, and unfortunately it's a difficult one. So we're going to focus on it, but inshallah we will be finished within the matter of seconds actually. This one won't take a lot of time, but it's a little bit difficult, so please focus. The Spanish flu and the economic depression that followed led to a wave of nationalism, which is caring about your country, authoritarianism, caring about leadership, and another world war. Therefore, with the onset of COVID-19, countries should be united against a common viral enemy. Now the question says, what would most logically follow this sentence? So like what would follow this sentence? What can be placed here? Okay? While being consistent with the rest of the paragraph. So in this paragraph, we're talking about how previous epidemics like the Spanish flu and previous catastrophes like economic depression caused nationalism, authoritarianism, and another world war, all of which are bad things, right? And as a result, we're trying to argue that we should learn from our mistakes, right? We want to learn from our mistakes, and countries should be united together against a common enemy. So what we're trying to say is that we should fight these things. We should fight nationalism, we should fight authoritarianism and another world war. We should try to have a united front, to stand together, right? As we can see here from the word united, we should be united together. This is what we're trying to say. So which of these answers makes the most sense? I will leave you a moment to pause the video and read the answers. Let's go on. So the correct answer in this case has to be A. The pandemic should strengthen globalization. The word globalization means world unity. And eradicate xenophobia, which is the fear of other races, like of other people, of other nationalities. And therefore the answer has to be A. I hope that you had a good time listening to this video. I apologize if it's a little bit long, but I try to explain everything so that you do not have any problems when it comes to similar questions.